Hi, everybody. Sorry we're a little late. I am posting something. I'm going to pin something in the comment box because, as you know, it's me, Christy, Jess, and Michelle who are going to be on here, and we are going to be reading Roswell, Loose Ends. We're going to start with book one and try to go through as much as we can. And we're doing something cool that I thought was pretty cool, is just raising awareness for some great charities that we like and we believe in. So I'm going to just post a little link to that. I couldn't find it where you could have automatically donate. The link for that wouldn't work for some reason. But regardless, I'm just going to put that in the comments. So hello, everybody. I'm excited. People are here. Yay. Okay, hold on. Get distracted. Oh, and for those of you who don't want to be spoiled by book reading, then you need to get out. But I think most of you are here and you want to be spoiled and you want to hear the book. So okay. That's what it is. See if I can get it up there. Okay, it's pinned. Yay. Okay, now I can wave to everybody that I missed. Because I like that. I like doing that. Okay. Okay, that's better. Okay, so as you know, I'm Christy. I am the creator of this page, and we are going to read this. So I'm going to bring on my friend Michelle, and she's going to herself and tell you about the charity that we're wanting to highlight. Hi.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh,
Can
hi.
you see the pinned comment at the bottom?
I can.
Okay, good. So it's
Great.
there.
Did you want me to go ahead and start?
Yes.
I never know when
you
to
can go
start
ahead,
talking.
introduce yourself for those of you who don't know you, but
So my name's Michelle, huge Roswell fan since the beginning. Back in the 90s, I'm aging myself. Watched it when it first came on. I was 15, just turned 16 years old. So I'm excited to be here with everybody. I haven't read to anybody out loud that was over the age of 5 in a long time. So this should be pretty interesting. The reason I see that Christy did pin the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund, one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about this charity is that it provides equity and access to education, health care, criminal justice, voting rights, and it really works to remove barriers in education, such as funding for African American students. And so as a college employee, I'm really passionate about it. And so I hope that you all take the opportunity to donate if you can. You certainly don't have to be here, but I will. And if you can, we hope that you will too.
yeah, is it one of those cool charities you can just donate $1? Because I know a lot of charities are like that, where you can literally
I think you can
$1.
donate any amount.
Okay. Well, any good amount helps if you can, but we understand if you can't because we are still in a crazy global pandemic. So, but
if you can donate 1 million, that'd be great.
Yeah. So, hello everybody, and I guess do you want to start reading the first chapter?
Absolutely. Let's get into this. So I'll read at the beginning. There's a little quote by the one and only Bill Clinton. So I'll read that out loud for you all as well. As far as I know, an alien spacecraft did not crash at Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. If the United States Air Force did recover alien bodies, they didn't tell me, and I want to know. President William Jefferson Clinton, December of 1995. I think we all want to know. Okay, so prologue. What are you doing? I told you never to call me here. It's too dangerous. Shut up. This line is secure. Believe me. Have you got it? Not yet, but I will. I know where it is, and I know how to get it. You'd better. There's a lot at stake here for both of us, so don't screw up. I won't, I promise. Everything's on schedule just like we planned. Good. You know where to meet me, be there on time, and don't even think about double-crossing me. You know what happened to the last guy that tried that.
Woo! Can we give a synopsis before we officially, start? I don't know.
Go for it.
For those of you who don't know, this book, Loose Ends, this is the first book in the Roswell series. And this is basically about a road trip that the kids take to Carlsbad Caverns to unwind. And Liz ends up meeting the guy who shot her in the pilot in the crash down. And so we go through this whole adventure about this guy actually wanting her dead for some reason that we're going to find out as we read this book. So stay tuned and we will keep reading.
Okay, chapter 1. So you really think Hillary might be a skin? I'm not saying it's for sure. I'm saying that it's a possibility. Max and Michael huddled over a copy of USA Today, intently examining the day's news in search of hints of hostile alien activity. Max didn't need a highlighter to mark the article in question. He just ran his fingers over the black and white newsprint, and the selected headline acquired a bright yellow background. What about Kathy Lee? He asked, turning to the next page of paper. I always thought there was something kind of unnatural about her. Says my favorite human-alien hybrid, Liz Parker thought silently. But that wasn't really fair. The petite brunette admitted to herself in many ways, and despite his extraterrestrial origins, Max was the most human person she knew. As she knew better than anyone else, there was nothing alien at all about his heart. It was a quiet Thursday afternoon at the Crashdown Cafe, Roswell, New Mexico's finest alien-themed diner and the gang's usual after-school hangout. Watercolor paintings of strange alien creatures decorated the walls, while a mannequin in a silver spacesuit greeted customers by the front door. Liz sat at one of the restaurant's rear booths opposite Max and Michael, while Max's sister Isabel and their friend Alex Whitman occupied the adjacent booth, close enough to take part in the proceedings if they felt like it. Liz knew that Alex would have preferred to have had Isabel all to himself, but guessed that he'd settle for just sharing the same booth with her. Hope things are going okay between them, Liz thought. Isabel can be pretty moody sometimes. Kathy Lee, Maria DeLuca asked, rolling her large olive green eyes. Her silver waitress's apron mimicked the unearthly countenance of your standard model alien abductor as she stood beside the two rear booths. Shiny tinfoil antenna bobbed above her long strawberry blonde hair. The diner rush hadn't started yet, so Maria was free to kill time with her friends. Don't you think maybe you guys are getting a wee bit paranoid? Michael bristled indignantly, not unlike his unruly brown hair. This is serious business. Maybe you can joke about it, but some of us can't afford to overlook any possibilities. Empty bottles of Tabasco sauce littered the tabletop, evidence of his and Max's strenuous strategy session. You can never tell where the skins might strike next. Hey, you don't need to bite my head off, alien boy, Maria retorted, scanning quickly and quietly to make sure that no new customers had arrived. She slid into the booth beside Liz. I know all about the evil alien invasion. Remember? I was just trying to give you guys a much-needed reality check. Oh, is that what it was? Michael asked sarcastically. A scowl made him look even more ticked off and discontented than usual. I thought you were busting my chops about things you obviously don't understand or appreciate. He eyed the pad of green order slips tucked into the belt of Maria's ET apron. Maybe you should stick to the customer's checks from now on. Maria immediately shifted into combat mode. Yeah, right, and maybe you never want to see the inside of the eraser room again, she replied, referring to their usual makeout spot at West Roswell High. Heck, summer vacation's coming up. You could be looking at a long, lonely summer, Michael Guerin. Liz winced at the heated words exchanged between the on-again, off-again couple. Granted, Maria and Michael bickering was nothing new, but there seemed to be more of an edge to it than usual. She glanced across the table at Max, who appeared oblivious to the escalating spitting match going on right next to him. Beneath his neatly trimmed black bangs, lines of worry and concentration creased his brow as he vigilantly pursued the newspaper, occasionally highlighting a suspicious headline or photo caption. A chocolate dark side of forced milkshake set more than or less ignored next to his uneaten grilled lunar cheese sandwich. Liz's heart ached in sympathy. He looked like he was bearing the weight of the world on his shoulders, maybe more than one world. Cool it, you guys, she told Michael and Maria. If she couldn't relieve Max of most of his unfair burden, at least she could play peacemaker between his squabbling friends and allies. We're all kind of stressed out, I think. And who wouldn't be, she thought, after all we've been through lately. Let's cut each other some slack, okay? Yeah, I guess so, Michael agreed, looking a little chastened. He shrugged, which was about as close as he ever came to an apology, and cast a conciliatory look at Maria, who relaxed her own combative body language a notch or two. I just want to be ready, for the FBI, for the skins, for everything. Are you sure we should be talking about this here? Isabel asked anxiously from the next booth, looking over the back of her seat at Liz and the others. Like her brother, she looked tense and worried, while her voice, if anything, sounded more nervous and apprehensive. Her immaculate cover-girl appearance belied her chronic uneasiness. What if someone heard you? Like who? Maria snorted. A devout advocate of aromatherapy, she fetched a tiny glass vial from her pocket and uncapped it beneath her nose. Sniffing the fragrant oil seemed to ease her frustration with Michael. Look around, she said. This place is deader than Senator Whitaker. Sitting across from Isabel, nibbling on a stack of golden, unidentified frying objects, Alex tried to reassure her. Besides, don't forget this is Roswell, the unofficial capital of Close Encounters land, he said, a grin upon his boyish face. The tourists expect to hear us discussing crashed alien spaceships and top secret government conspiracies. Heck, we should probably be talking louder just to do our part for the local economy. His glib attempt to lift Isabel's spirits failed miserably. That's not funny, Alex, she said curtly before turning her attention back to the 4 teens in the other booth. Liz pretended not to notice the crushed look on Alex's face when he attempted to hide it as quickly as it appeared. We never know who might be listening, Isabel continued. We've been spied on before with hidden cameras and listening devices and who knows what else. True enough, Liz thought, but you could go crazy thinking about that 24/7. She picked absently at her little green mint sundae while a new song by Dido played over the diner's music system. Where do you draw the line, she wondered, between being careful and being paranoid? And was it fair of her to judge Isabel for being so high-strung and fearful? Liz had only lived with the big secret for 2 years now. Max, Michael, and Isabel had been hiding their alien heritage for their entire lives. Liz is right, Maria announced decisively. She swept the faces around her with a knowing gaze. We're all a bunch of nervous wrecks. We need some serious R&R, and I mean soon. Just for this weekend, we should forget about all the hidden secrets, fiendish enemies, etc., and do something fun for a change. She plucked the spread-out newspaper out from under Max's nose. And that means you too, glorious leader. All work and no play makes Max a dull spaceman. Max looked more startled than annoyed by Maria's impulsive action. Michael scowled, though, and tried to snatch back the crumpled papers, which Maria stubbornly held up over her head out of his reach. Look, babe, he pleaded, making an obvious effort not to lose his temper. I don't want to get into this with you again, but there's an interplanetary war going on. We haven't got time for fun and games. Oh, yeah? Maria challenged him. You think I don't ever watch the History Channel? Even back during World War I or II or whichever war it was, the soldiers took time out occasionally for shore leave and USO shows and all that Andrews Sisters boogie woogie bugle boy stuff. They had to, or they'd just wig out. It was important to their, morals. Morale, Liz corrected her gently. She was surprised and relieved to see that Max seemed to be giving Maria his full attention, listening to her whole spiel with thoughtful expression. You know, she may have a point, Max, Liz added, seeing a chance to lighten his load a little, if only for one weekend. We could all use a break. Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying, Maria declared, vindicated by Liz's voice of support. Vote of support. She settled back into her seat, the decision a done deal as far as she was concerned, and stroked her chin as she considered their options. I'm thinking road trip, but to where? That's the question. An idea suddenly occurred to Liz. I know, she blurted out. We could go to Carlsbad Caverns. It's only a couple hours away, and Mrs. Hultquist in Earth Sciences said she'd give extra credit to any student who went to the caves and wrote a report on their trip. Spoken like the science nerd you are, Maria teased her best friend. I'm thinking wild teenage hijinks, and you want to go on a field trip. No, it will be fun, really, Liz insisted. My parents used to take me to the caverns when I was little, and it was always really cool. A surge of nostalgia hit her with unexpected force, bringing back bittersweet memories of childhood pleasures and simpler times before her life grew so very complicated. A lump formed in her throat. She felt her eyes watering. Guess I need a vacation as much as anybody else, she realized. A vacation back to a more carefree me. As if he could sense her longing and for a little harmless childhood regression, Max nodded solemnly. Carlsbad Caverns works for me, he stated with quiet authority. His dark, serious eyes surveyed the faces around him. What do the rest of you think? No surprise Michael was unconvinced. What do I care about Earth Sciences? He said sourly, making another unsuccessful grab at the stolen newspaper. I'm not even from Earth. Maria gave him a warning glare. Don't be such a Czechoslovakian party pooper, she said, using her preferred euphemism for extraterrestrial, or I might forget that you're the love of my life. Michael sank back sullenly against the back of the booth, clearly resentful, but apparently unwilling to push his luck much further, at least for now. Okay, make that 3 votes for the caverns, Maria said smugly. She craned her head to peer into the next booth over. What about you, Alex? You up for a journey to the center of the earth? I think so, he answered awkwardly, searching Isabel's exquisitely made-up face for some clue to her preferences. What do you think, Is? He smiled broadly, trying too hard to sound cheerful and upbeat. Sounds like it could be fun. Isabel, in turn, turned to her brother for guidance. Are you sure this is a good idea, Max? She asked, her uncertain tone making it sound like they were discussing a root canal rather than a joyride. Liz wondered somewhat uncharitably if Prozac worked on aliens. It couldn't hurt, Is, Max said softly. Liz couldn't help noticing how tenderly he handled his sister's frayed and fragile nerves. How could he doubt he was born to be his people's leader? Isabel's hand gripped the wooden divider between the 2 booths, and Max gently placed his own hand atop hers. Plus, it might be exactly what we all need. Okay, Isabel assented. She managed a wan smile, making an effort to get into the spirit of things. A changed scenery might be nice at that. That settles it then, Maria said triumphantly. You're outvoted Michael 5-1. A burst of organizational energy animated from her body, setting her antenna bobbling vigorously. I'll borrow the Jetta from my mom. Max and Isabel can get their Jeep. Liz and Michael, you stock up on munchies, soda, and Tabasco sauce, and we'll all be set. Saturday morning, we're hitting the road for Carlsbad Caverns. Maria's enthusiasm was infectious. Liz grinned at Max, who smiled back at her. Beneath the table, she playfully rubbed her foot against his ankle. It's great to see him looking relaxed again, she thought, starting to get genuinely excited about the weekend ahead. She couldn't remember the last time the 2 of them had just been able to have a good time together, enjoying each other's company instead of running and hiding and agonizing about various earthly and unearthly threats. The more she thought about it, the better it sounded. A fun-filled weekend outing is just what the doctor orders, she decided, for all of us. She couldn't wait to get going.
Probably need some water now. Yeah, I have my water bottle with me.
Woo!
So to give us some context, I think according to Jess, this actually is happening like a little more than midway through season 2 after Viva Las Vegas. So Jess, you can confirm in the chat room. So I find it interesting that like Liz is rubbing Max's foot. So I'm guessing the whole Max and Tess thing hasn't quite happened yet. So, because I remember watching Viva Las Vegas and going, oh, maybe they're going to get back together now, like in the next episode. And then like that didn't happen. So I was so sad.
Heartbreak. I don't know if it's the same for you, but when I'm reading Max out loud, I hear his voice in my head, and then I get all kinds of confused. I hear their voices because we know, you know. So I'm like, wait a second. I'm hearing Max, but I hear him. It's really strange. Do you want me to keep going? Do you want to pick up on chapter 2?
I can pick up on the next chapter. Just that it's before that? Or she's saying yes. So yes, it's before Viva Las Vegas or after Viva Las Vegas? I don't know. The possibility of Max and Liz is still like a reality at this point. But basically it's season 2, midway through. So just to give you guys some background. Okay, so we're going to be on to chapter 2. And I'm just seeing how many pages I have to read. Gosh, it's a lot. I haven't read this much since I was a kid, honestly. Oh my gosh, I have a lot. You might have to pick up halfway through, or maybe Jess may have to pop in here and pick up halfway through. But oh my gosh. Yeah, 10 pages in, I'm going to be like, wow.
I mean, I can try to go through part of it, and if you want to jump in the middle.
Yeah, that might be a good idea. Jess is looking for her list. Okay. All right. So yeah, maybe in the middle you can help me out, because I'm thinking. Oh, I gotcha. We'll see. We'll see how far I can get before I want to take a break. Okay, but I do love reading out loud because I used to do this as a kid. So, all right, chapter 2. Believe it or not, the park ranger explained, this entire region was once at the bottom of a huge inland sea. 250 million years ago, these caves began as a series of underwater reefs. Eventually, however, the sea dried up and the reef was buried beneath tons of sediment. Over the centuries, geological pressures gradually pushed the reef system back toward the surface, where rainwater seeping through cracks in the limestone began carving out the caverns all around us. Liz tried to imagine the arid Chihuahuan Desert, now about 700 feet above them, covered in seawater, but it was hard to visualize, especially after driving all the way down from Roswell through almost 100 miles of sun-baked, reddish-brown New Mexican landscape. Fortunately, they had gotten off to an early start this morning before the June heat hit its peak. Isn't this amazing, Max? She said, taking in the spectacular subterranean scenery all around them. Jagged stalactites hung like gigantic stone icicles high above their heads, while fang-like stalagmites reached towards the ceiling. Massive calcite columns formed when the stalactites met their inverted counterparts, rose dramatically like the pillars of some ancient pagan temple. In places, the limestone walls of the spacious cavern resembled frozen waterfalls or overlapping sheets of petrified drapery. Colored lights positioned strategically throughout the caves displayed its natural wonders to their best advantage, providing an eye-catching array of shadows, hues, and textures. Time had polished many of the formations, giving them a pearly, opalescent sheen. It's like an alien world, Liz thought, right here on Earth. It is impressive, Max agreed, his arm around her waist as they strolled along with the large herd of tourists, making an effort to stay within earshot of the friendly ranger giving the group a guided tour of the King's Palace section of the caverns. Max ducked his head to whisper in your ear, this place makes the pod chamber, where he and the other alien children had been buried after the crash, look like a gopher hole. And this is just a small fraction of what's down here, Liz commented, flipping through the guidebook she had bought on the surface. It says here that there are over 85 caverns in the park, of which only 10 or so are open to the public. You hear that, folks? Maria chimed in. She and Michael were right behind them, followed closely by Alex and Isabel. Nobody get lost, because I don't want to go poking around in spooky backfill caves looking for you. Maria was traumatized by the adventures of Tom Sawyer at an early age, Liz teased. recalling the sequence where Becky, Thatcher, and Tom were stalked through an underground labyrinth by the murderous Injun Joe. She used to hide behind the couch whenever we got to that part on the video. Funny, I don't remember being alone behind that couch, Marie stated. She gave Liz a playful punch from behind. Admit it, Parker, you were as just creeped out as I was. Well, we were only 10 at the time, Liz said. I like to think I'd be a bit braver now. After the skins of the special unit, Max said, I'm sure of it. He tightened his hold on her waist, giving her an affectionate squeeze. Just the same, everybody stick to the blighted trails, Marie insisted, clearly getting in touch with her inner dead mother. And remember, if we get separated, everybody meet back at the elevator. Michael snorted, like I'm really going to be tempted to go exploring on my own. He regarded the surrounding stalagmites and such with a distinctly unimpressed air. I mean, it's just a humongous hole in the ground. What's the big deal? Maria pulled away from Michael, glaring at him balefully. You know, you could at least try to have a good time, for my sake. Or would that spoil your whole image as a rebel without a planet? Hey, so I don't feel like lean and eyeing over a bunch of pretty lights and rock formations. Is that such a crime? He growled. Slouched shoulders advertised his lack of enthusiasm for the entire expedition. Give me a break. Lighten up. By now, Marie was fuming visibly. She turned on him angrily, green eyes flashing. No, you lighten up, Michael Guerin. And another thing, a middle-aged tourist wearing a souvenir Carlsbad Caverns baseball cap shushed the teenagers, an annoyed look on her face. Liz blushed, embarrassed, even though it wasn't really her fault, and even Marie and Michael looked a little abashed. They all lowered their voices as they hurried to catch up with their tour guide, who was now explaining why one particular formation was known as the Frustrated Lovers. Well, that's appropriate, Liz thought wryly, particularly where Maria and Michael were concerned. Flashbulbs flared as a mob of tourists elbowed and jostled their way forward, trying to get a better view of the petrified lovers. The one problem with hitting the caverns on a sunny summer weekend, Liz realized, was coping with the inevitable crowds. There seemed to be hundreds of people exploring the various caverns today, which made sightseeing a bit of a hassle. The crush of would-be splunkers squeezed the small band of high school students together, making it easier to converse without raising their voices. You know, Alex remarked, now that he and Isabel were right next to Liz, this whole thing is cool and all, but I can't help thinking that the public parts of the caverns have been domesticated too much. You've got paved trails, electricity, lights, guardrails, even wastebaskets every 50 yards or so. To prove his point, he slam-dumped a wadded-up candy bar wrapper into the nearest convenient trash receptacle. Don't you think it would be spookier and more atmospheric if these caverns actually look more like caves and less like an underground mall? I see your point, Alex, Max said ambly, sounding more at ease than he had for weeks, maybe months. Although I think there are more caverns nearby that have been left in something closer to their natural state for more serious cavers and other caves that have been barely explored at all. He leafed through the guidebook in Liz's hands. Yeah, it says here there's Slaughter Canyon Cave, Spider Cave, and some that don't even have names yet. Now there's an idea, Alex enthused. Why do you think, Isabel, he grinned goofily at Max's sister. The wiry would-be musician and the pristine prom queen made an odd-looking couple, but Liz had more or less given up trying to figure out their relationship. Later on, you want to go looking for a cave of our own? He wiggled his eyebrows, Groucho style, trying to coax a laugh or smile from his glamorous but emotionally elusive dream girl. Just you, me, and a couple thousand bats. I don't think that would be safe, Isabel responded, more or less missing the point. Although she dutifully held on to Alex's hand, her manner remained distant and preoccupied. Why don't we just listen to the ranger's lecture, okay? Yeah, sure, that's fine, I guess, Alex muttered, disappointed once again. It is never-ending struggle to get past Isabel's considerable defenses. Liz had to admire his persistence, even if she sometimes thought he was fighting a losing battle. She sighed sympathetically, taking stock of the fracture lines dividing her friends. At the moment, it seemed as though only she and Max were making the most of today's excursion. That's too bad, she thought, squeezing Max's waist even tighter, but I'm not going to let Michael and Marie's proms or Alex and Isabel's spoil my own day with Max. After risking her own life and happiness to save the entire world from alien invaders, she figured she was entitled to be a little bit selfish, if only for just one weekend. The park ranger, who obviously knew every nook and cranny of the King's Palace caverns by heart, led them deeper and deeper into the vaulted subterranean chambers of Carlsbad Caverns. Despite the wool sweater she had prudently remembered to bring along, Liz found herself shivering slightly as the temperature within the caves dropped along with their elevation. Glancing at her wristwatch, which read 10:45 a.m., she guessed that it was probably over 90 degrees back on the surface. 800 plus feet below, however, it was noticeably chilly. Brr, Liz thought, wishing she had brought a jacket as well. Then again, the unseasonably cool air did give her an excuse to huddle closer to Max. After leading them in and out of the King's Palace, pausing periodically to take in such colorfully named attractions as the bashful elephant in the Queen's chamber, their guide dropped them off the underground rest area near the elevator to the surface. Well, I hope you enjoyed the tour, the ranger said. If you want, you can now take the elevator back to the visitor center up top, or you can take a self-guided tour of the big room. He pointed at the subterranean archway directly behind them. If you haven't seen the big room yet, then you really don't want to miss it. We're talking one of the largest underground spaces in the world, spacious enough to hold over a dozen full-size football fields. Ooh boy, an even bigger hole, Michael said sarcastically, eliciting the venomous look from Maria. Not as big as the one you're doing for yourself, she warned him. Ouch, Liz thought. She wouldn't want to be in Michael's shoes when Maria finally got him alone. According to the guidebook, it took about an hour and a half to explore the big room completely, so they decided to take a combined snack and bathroom break first. Fortunately, a genuine cafeteria, complete with restrooms and a gift shop, had been constructed near the elevator, a mere 750 feet below ground. Liz waved goodbye to Max as the group temporarily split apart, each going in search of munchies or whatever. She wasn't feeling hungry just yet, so after a quick trip to the ladies' room, she decided to browse a bit in the gift shop. Maybe I can find a nice gift for Max or my folks, she thought. After growing up in Roswell, it felt odd to be in a souvenir store that wasn't packed to the ceiling with tacky UFO and alien knickknacks. Where were the inflatable ETs and cheesy take-me-to-your-leader postcards? Instead, the underground gift shop traded heavily in rubber bats, cheap imitation Kachina dolls, and a wide variety of overpriced cave-related merchandise. Mugs, ashtrays, pennants, souvenir spoons, snow globes, etc. Weaving her way through a pack of bargain-hunting tourists, Liz rifled through a rack of postcards near the front of the shop. One postcard in particular caught her eye, a colored photo of some ancient Native American line carvings found just beyond the entrance of the cave. Interesting, she thought. A couple of the time-worn carvings vaguely resembled some of the alien symbols she and the others had discovered in caves around Roswell. Could there be a connection? She grabbed a copy of the card to show to Max and started to make her way towards the cash register. As she neared the checkout counter, an angry voice coming from right up ahead froze her in her tracks. $5.95 for this piece of crap? What do you think I am, a moron? No, Liz thought, not him. It can't be. The voice, deep and raspy, jolted Liz's memory like an electric shock. Shivering for reasons that had nothing to do with the temperature, she shoved her way through the throngs of shoppers to get a look at the voice's owner, ignoring the complaints and protests of the people she elbowed past. Wait just 1 minute, young lady, a woman in a Hawaiian shirt called out, but Liz wasn't listening. She had to see whom the irate voice belonged to, right now, this very minute. Standing on her tiptoes, peering frantically over the shoulders of a bunch of frustratingly immovable tourists, she spied the upset customer. A burly Caucasian man wearing a red vinyl jacket and a bright orange hunter's cap. Reddish-brown stubble covered his chin and jowls while his broad, belligerent face was flushed with irritation. Liz recognized him right away. Oh my God, she thought. An icy chill suffused her entire body, and without thinking, she clutched her saddle protectively. It's him. It's really him. The man who nearly killed her. The Crash Down Cafe, almost 2 years ago. It all happened very quickly. 1 minute she was waiting tables with Maria, trading quips and gossip, when suddenly a loud argument broke out at one of the side booths. Two rough-looking men, whom Liz had never seen before, started fighting over money. Before anyone else in the diner had a choice to react or call the police, the heavier of the two men drew a gun on his companion, who grabbed onto the gunman's arm in self-defense. The two men wrestled for control of the pistol, and then without warning, the gun went off. I'm going to get Michelle back in here. And hello to everyone who's joined us. Says you're unable to join, Michelle, but I think I add you back.
Sorry, okay. Apparently I can't turn up my own phone without hitting a button.
All right. All right, we'll keep going. Standing a few yards away near the kitchen door, Liz heard a tremendous bang and felt a sudden pain in her stomach below her ribs. Before she knew it, without really understanding how she got there, she was lying on her back under the cool tile floor, staring up at the fluorescent lights in the ceiling. The pain in her belly burned like fire, but the rest of her felt very, very cold. People shouted and Maria screamed, but the confused cries seemed to be coming from somewhere very far away. The icy numbness spread through her body, and somehow Liz knew that she was dying. Oh my God, she thought in a haze. But she thought in a daze. I've been shot. The fluorescent light seemed to dim, and a murky darkness began encroaching on the periphery of her vision, blocking out the light. Something wet, warm, and sticky pooled atop her stomach, soaking through her uniform. Liz wanted to sit up, inspect her injury, but she couldn't even lift her head. Her arms and hands lay uselessly upon the floor, lacking the strength to move. All her strength and vitality was slipping away, consumed by the blazing fire below her ribs. It's not fair, she thought, barely managing to keep her eyes open. I can't be dying. It's too soon. The darkness crept in on her from all sides, making it harder and harder to think. Her heartbeat grew slower and fainter every second. A sense of profound regret came over her, driving out the fear and the pain. I'm only 17. I haven't even... And all of a sudden, Max was there, calling her back from the abyss. His soulful face and caring brown eyes staring down at her, filling her vision. He tore open her uniform and laid his hand upon her stomach, quenching the fire there with the cool depths of his spirit. Her life was never the same again. The two men, Maria had told her later, crashed down as soon as the gun went off. They were locked before Sheriff Valenti and his deputies showed up to investigate. Everyone figured they skipped town, and Liz had never expected to see the man who shot her again. Until now. Without thinking, Liz gasped out loud. The memory was so strong she felt like she'd been shot all over again. She could practically smell the gunpowder in the air, hear the sharp report of the gunshots echoing within her ears. She glanced down her stomach, half expecting to see the blood leaking through her fingers. Help, God. Somebody help. Display of snow globes. The fragile souvenirs containing molded plastic replicas of the cave's stalactites and stalagmites crashed to the floor, shattering loudly and spilling their liquid contents all over the tiles beneath Liz's feet. The noisy crash attracted the attention of everyone in the shop, including the beefy, loudmouth man at the cashier. Who shot the crash down. He peered at Liz with a smug, sadistic expression, clearly enjoying someone else's embarrassment, then reacted with surprise once he got a good look at her face. He squinted quizzically, a scowl forming amid his stubble as he examined Liz more closely from across the room. Panic gripped Liz's heart. Did he recognize me? She thought, suddenly terrified. Does he know who I am? An overpowering need to get away came over her, and she turned and ran frantically out of the gift shop, leaving behind a mess of broken glass and water. She barreled through the crowds, both in and out of the cafeteria, and didn't stop running until she was all the way to the opening of the big room. Her heart was pounding in her chest, and she felt like she could barely breathe. A scream of utter terror and dismay formed in the back of her throat, and she had to bite down on her lower lip to keep from shrieking hysterically. She was afraid to look behind, afraid that she'd see the gun-wielding man chasing after her. She flinched in anticipation of another ear-shattering gunshot tearing her world apart. Liz! Suddenly Max was there, right in front of her, and she gratefully ran into his arms, grabbing onto him like he was a life preserver in the middle of a stormy sea. She buried her face against his chest and began sobbing uncontrollably. You're white as ghost. What is it? He asked, alarmed by her obvious distress. What's the matter, Liz? What happened? Racing footsteps pounded upon the paved concrete trail, and soon they were surrounded by Maria, Alex, Michael, and Isabel, all looking confused and concerned. Are you okay, girlfriend? Maria asked, offering Liz a cup of lemonade from the snack bar. Here, have a sip of this. It took a few seconds, but Liz eventually lifted her face away from Max's chest. She wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand while she tried to get her sobbing under control. The lemonade helped a little, but her eyes kept searching anxiously for the man from the shop. Everything's fine, nothing to see here, Michael called out to a bunch of passing sightseers who had paused to see what the matter was. Just a bout of claustrophobia, that's all, Michael assured the strangers. Please, Liz, Max urged her softly. She felt his warm arms holding onto her tightly and remembered how on that terrible day at the crash down he had healed her with his special powers. Tell me what happened, he pleaded. She nodded weakly, anxious to share her fears with him and the others. But first she needed to put still more distance between her and the site of her terrifying encounter, just in case the man in the red jacket was looking for her. Not here, she whispered plaintively. She tilted her head towards the entrance to the big room. Let's just go a little further, please. Okay, Max said, looking puzzled, but willing to do whatever it took to make her safe again. He draped her arm over her shoulders, lending her support as he guided her towards the cavern opening. In there, he instructed the others, taking the lead while exchanging worried looks with both Michael and Isabel. No doubt he had to be wondering, Liz realized, whether one of their human or inhuman enemies had caught up with them again. Not this time, she thought ruefully, leaning against Max as they walked along the underground trail, gladly letting it prop her up. For once, this wasn't an alien thing. It was Liz's own past that had come back to haunt them. The big room was just as awe-inspiring as she remembered it. Hundreds of stalactites hung from the ceiling, over 25 feet above their heads, while the vast underground chamber stretched out before them like some enormous subterranean cathedral. Wow, Alex exclaimed, impressed despite the prices of Liz. It looks like you could fit most of downtown Roswell in here and still have room to spare. But Liz was in no shape to appreciate the stupendous natural wonders surrounding her. Max led her gently into one of the big room's many vaulted grottos. A towering stalagmite the size and width of some ancient Egyptian obelisk loomed over them as he slipped out from beneath her arm in order to look her directly in the face. Is this far enough, Liz? He asked deliciously. Can you tell us what happened now? I think so, she stammered, swallowing hard and sniffling. Although still badly shaken, she was starting to feel a little calmer now. The initial panic was fading, giving way to a feeling of slightly greater security now that she had Max and her friends to comfort and protect her. They were all clustered around her now, watching her with concerned and caring eyes as they waited nervously to find out what had frightened her so badly. It's him, Max, she whispered finally. The man who shot me at the crash down. He's here. What? Max reacted explosively. Where? Quickly she told him about her chance encounter with the man at the gift shop and how she had fled the scene in terror. Saying the words somehow made the entire awful experience even more real, and she had to pause for a second before continuing. Isabel thoughtfully handed her a napkin to wipe her eyes and nose with, and she dabbed at her face with the paper towel while she struggled to regain her composure. Now what do? She wondered, scared and uncertain. Is there anything we can do, or should do? Max, on the other hand, had apparently heard enough. That son of a bitch, he exclaimed with uncharacteristic rage. His expression darkened, and he clenched his fists before stepping back and glaring fiercely at the way they had come. Without warning, he stalked away from the group, heading straight for the exit. Hey, Max, Michael called out, taking off after him. Where do you think you're going? The rest of you take care of Liz, Max shouted, not even looking back. He was halfway out of the grotto by now. I'm going to get the slime ball who shot her. Whoa there, man, catching up with Max. Michael laid a restraining hand on a friend's shoulder. Hold on, we've got to think about this. Max spun around angrily. For a second, Liz thought he was going to punch Michael in the face. She couldn't remember the last time she had seen Max look so enraged. What's to talk about? He snapped, brusquely knocking his best friend's hand aside. That bastard nearly killed Liz. Michael looked around furtively. Max had deliberately selected a natural alcove off the beaten track, but he and Michael's tense confrontation was still starting to hand present. Chill out, man, he whispered intently, indicating with a gesture that they should lower their voices. We don't want to attract any unnecessary attention, right? A lifetime of cautious anonymity seemed to supersede Max's seething fury, at least in part, and he weighed Michael's words carefully. His blazing eyes swung back and forth between Michael and the route back to the gift shop, as if torn between conflicting impulses. I don't know, he said through gritted teeth, his fists remaining clenched at his sides. He might get away. Let's just talk this over for a few minutes, Michael insisted. Despite the upsetting circumstances, Liz couldn't help noting how bizarre it was to hear Michael acting as the voice of reason. Usually Michael was the impetuous one, while Max advocated common sense and caution. She didn't know whether to be flattered or alarmed by Max's violent reaction to her unplanned reunion with the shooter. I never realized he hated that guy so much. With open reluctance, Max returned with Michael to where Liz and the others were standing in the shadow of the colossal stalagmite. Make it fast, he said impatiently. I don't want that trigger-happy scumbag to get away. He looked back at the exit, then back, and glanced at his watch. For all we know, he's already heading for Mexico. Hey, how about if I keep an eye on him? Alex volunteered. While the rest of you plot strategy or whatever. He shrugged his lanky shoulders as if it were no big deal. I wasn't there the day of the crash done, so he doesn't know me from Adam. Max frowned, clearly wanting to go after the shooter himself and not seeing any obvious flaws in Alex's proposal. You sure you can identify him? He asked skeptically. Big guy, red jacket, orange cap, bad attitude, Alex recited, quoting the description Liz had given them. No problem. Sounds like a plan then, Michael agreed. Liz knew what he had to be thinking. If nothing else, Alex seemed to be in a lot calmer state than Max, and thus less likely to cause a scene that might attract undue attention. Go for it. Be careful, Alex, Isabel said, as Alex took off back towards the gift shop. He grinned back at her, visibly delighted by her concern. Liz hoped that Alex wouldn't take any unnecessary chances just to impress Isabel. The remaining teens huddled beneath the giant calcite peak. Okay, Michael said, looking around warily to make sure no strangers were listening. How do we want to handle this? Are you kidding? Maria asked incredulously. She had draped her own arm protectively over Liz, who was still trembling like a rabbit caught in a trap. We've got to tell the police right away. She scratched her head with her free hand, puzzled by a new thought. Do park rangers count as police? Not so fast, Michael said. The last thing we want to do is call the authorities' attention back to that incident at the crash down. Officially, remember, there was no shooting. Max healed Liz before the cops showed up. But I was shot, Liz recalled. Her hand strayed once more to the spot with the bullet and her body. There wasn't even a scar there now, she knew, thanks to Max's miraculous powers. But that didn't mean she couldn't still recall the sudden burning pain in her belly and the horrible way she felt her life slipping away for the hole in her stomach. Darkness closing in on me, blood soaking through my uniform. Michael is right, Isabel declared. She lingered at the back of the grotto, a strained expression on her immaculate face. It's too dangerous. We can't take the chance. Joanna, I just saw your question, and yes, you can take a screenshot. I don't mind. Maria stared at Michael and Isabel in disbelief. But we have to do something, she objected, sounding totally appalled at the notion of doing nothing. We can't just let this guy walk out of here scot-free. He shot Liz, for Pete's sake. Liz appreciated Marie's loyalty, but realized that Michael and Isabel had a point. They had all spent 2 stressful years covering up what had really happened, the crash down, the day she was shot. Do they really want to drag all that up into the light again? There was only so far Sheriff Valenti could protect them from outside scrutiny. I don't know, she said hesitantly. Maybe it's too complicated. Right, Michael asserted. What do we care about some low-life, trigger-happy hood? We've got enough problems with alien invaders, rogue FBI agents, shape changers, etc. I say we forget about him. Easier said than done, Liz thought. She'd always known, intellectually, that the shooter was still out there somewhere. But now, having discovered firsthand that he could reappear in her life at any time, she wasn't sure she would ever feel safe again. Max seemed to feel the same way. You're all forgetting one thing, he reminded the others. Liz could hear the brooding intensity in his voice, sense the pent-up fury contained in his coiled muscles and posture. This guy saw Liz too. If he recognized her, he knows she can identify him. That puts Liz in danger. I hadn't thought of that, Liz thought, feeling the panic flare up again. She shuddered violently and received a comforting hug from Maria, who also offered her a sniff from one of her ubiquitous vials of soothing scents. I'm not sure I could face him again, Liz confessed, dreading the very idea of running into the volatile gunman one more time. I'm afraid to budge from the spot. Apprehension tied a knot in her stomach, and her legs felt like soggy French fries. What if next time he recognizes me for sure? Well, we can take care of that easily enough, Isabel declared. At least a foot taller than Liz, she reached out and ran her open palm over Liz's long brown hair. Molecules rearranged at the alien teenager's delicate prodding, and Liz's cocoa-colored tresses turned a bright shade of scarlet. There, Isabel stated, instant redhead. With another pass of her hand, she shifted the hues of Liz's wool sweater from dark green to lemon yellow, and stepped back to inspect her work. Not bad, she pronounced. I doubt that anyone will recognize you now, let alone some jerk who only saw you once before, 2 years ago. Maria whistled appreciatively. Boy, you must save a lot of fortune on cosmetics and clothes, she remarked enviously to Isabel. I could change her eye color and hairstyle, too, Isabel said with a shrug. She produced a compact from her purse and offered the tiny mirror to Liz, but that might be overkill. Probably, Liz thought, marveling at the startling transformation revealed in the mirror. So that's what it looked like as a redhead. She had to admit that Isabel had done a good job of changing her appearance, which made Liz feel somewhat safer and more secure. A good disguise works wonders, I guess. Thank you, Isabel, Matt said to his sister. That was a smart idea. He eyed Liz curiously, no doubt trying to get used to her striking new look. It's still just a temporary solution, though. As long as this guy is loose, he's a potential threat to Liz. Liz recognized the look of determination in his eyes. He had made his decision. I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm going to track this guy down and make sure he never hurts anybody again, even if I have to do it alone. That's the end of chapter 2. And I think that's all we're going to have time for before the first live runs out, too, because we're probably going to run out in 9 minutes, unless we want to do another live. So, the next chapter I don't think is as long. This one was particularly long, and I'm surprised.
Yeah, the next one seems a bit shorter.
Yeah.
I do wish we would have seen the red hair on Liz in the show.
Yeah, that would have been interesting.
Be pretty cool.
Yeah, that chapter was over like 12 pages, and then this next one's like 8. So it really just depends.
You did so well.
I love reading. I love reading out loud, and I just kind of like forgot how much it like. I do enjoy it. I do enjoy it when I take the time, especially because it's Roswell. So
you can it just all comes right back. You can imagine every person. You know, usually when you read a book, you have to make up the character in your head. It's nice to have it already supplied for you.
Yeah. So, Jess, did you want to read the next chapter? Because if we do, we're probably going to have to go to another live, because eventually they're going to cut me off in like 7 minutes or so. How fast can you read? I feel like I read fast,
me?
but then I don't retain information that fast.
I feel like I read really fast, too. I feel like I was just breezing through that earlier. I don't think we could get through the 3rd chapter in 8 minutes.
Yeah. I figured we could discuss so far and like see your guys' comments, and if you have questions, we can answer them. And if you guys want another live, we can just start another one after this, and then we'll just start.
I mean, again. Is that something you all ever wondered about? Like, what happened to the 2 guys in the diner? Where did they end up? Did they get arrested? Did they get found out? Is that something that you worried about afterwards?
I think for me, I totally forgot about it. Totally forgot about those guys.
I did too.
It's all good now. Max Healer, it's fine. Like, we
They're gone.
Give those guys a second thought, you know.
I mean, they appeared to depart as friends. It was like, okay, we got to get out of here together after we just got in a fight and shot somebody.
Right. Yeah, I just like Maria's Beavis and Butthead reference to the description of them. That's what really stands.
Yep. Trying so hard not to imagine Beavis and Butthead when we read this.
Right. I actually used to watch Beavis and Butthead when I was a kid. My parents hated me for it, but I thought it was hilarious.
Me too. Did they get a form of justice?
Guess we'll find out in this book.
I was like, what?
Yeah, we'll continue to read and find out if they get justice. Rachel said she always thought they were just dirtbags passing through. Just thought it was like an accident. That's kind of what I thought. Like they didn't mean to shoot Liz. Like it wasn't intentional. But this book I think makes it seem like it was, at least from the back cover. So yeah, it'd be interesting to.
I mean, who would ever thought in the small town of Roswell, New Mexico, two guys would get in a fight in a cafe and shoot the waitress? What can you do?
That's why I thought it was an accident. But I love Liz's like description of how she felt when that happened, and she's like, something like Matt. It made her feel better.
Touche.
Like wow. Liz never got shot.
There is something that you get in the books that you really don't get to see on screen when you get to read how the character feels. Like it's different than seeing it on screen. So it's reading how Liz felt when she was shot. It's pretty interesting. Or not shot, Jess.
Yeah. I really like all the descriptions. I'm like very impressed by how descriptive the authors were. I was like, whoa, that's very, very descriptive and specific.
Yeah, Rachel, if they could have found him, absolutely.
Deborah doesn't realize she was that close to death. Yeah. Just shooting a gun in public, they should have been arrested. Rachel said, yeah. But they fled, so it's like, I guess the cops didn't find them ever,
And I have never even read this book. This is my first time with you all.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what?
Me too. I'm like, oh, really? Okay.
This happens? I'm like, maybe I need to go to Carlsbad Caverns, right?
That's a real place, right?
Business is about. Yeah. I mean, I believe so.
I'm looking it up. I think it's a real place.
Google.
It's for Google. Yep, it's a real.
Has anybody ever gone on one of those cave tours where you get to see like all the stalagmites and stalactites just coming down from the ceiling like a big bunch of teeth? I've never been in one of those. Jess, did you say yes? You've been there?
I'm going to Google how far they had to drive. I'm just curious. They had to drive an hour and 40 minutes.
Carlsbad Caverns.
That's a good 2-hour drive. Basically.
Over 100 caves.
Yeah. They had to drive about 2 hours and almost 100 miles. 95 miles to get there. On 285 South. That's the route.
That's right.
285 South. See, I just want to go to Roswell, New Mexico and say I was on 285 South because it's so special to us. As fans.
What did you say? Oh, Chattanooga. That's cool. I grew up about 2.5 hours away from Chattanooga.
Oh.
But never been to a cave like that. Southwest of England. Nice. Ooh. Oh. We probably could have read the 3rd chapter.
I know. Well, I wasn't sure. Okay, we're under a minute, actually. So, do you guys in the chat, do you want to keep reading or do you want to wait till next week? We could try to see at least if we can get through maybe 2 more chapters, because I think that's about an average how much we're probably going to get through per hour.
especially with us fast readers.
Yeah, us fast readers. Hopefully you guys are following along fine. Jess is like, keep going.
Jess is like, go.
I'll probably bring Jess on for the next one so she can read a little bit, if you don't mind, Michelle.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, we'll do that.
Oh, you're welcome. All right.
Wait, I go to bed in 15 minutes. Well, we'll
I
come
go to bed
on
in
and we'll
15
do another one.